Special New York State Referees Officials Association meeting to order. An update for rules interpretation and procedures during the COVID-19 crisis. So Fred, if you would like, well, let's take attendance first and then we'll do the pledge and all that.
Okay, Westchester Putnam.
Here, Ray Sarcone. Hi, Freddie.
All right.
Paulie as well.
Anybody else there?
Yeah, Paul Bolsh is there.
Okay, Mid Hudson.
Here, Fred,
I'm
Tom
here.
Cunningham, and Brent Kinney.
Not seeing Brent. Rockland.
I'm here, Freddie
Dave Warren.
and Dave.
Davey's here. I saw Davey on there.
Oh,
Capital, we got
Van Fronhoff,
Van
govern.
and Matt. Okay. Central New York, we got Paulie.
Yeah, I'm not sure who else is on.
Is Max on there yet?
Yes.
Kevin Maxwell? Did I hear you?
Good morning.
Okay, Kev. Good news coming for you, buddy.
Hooray.
Bruce, we got Billy Doran. Gary there. And William. John, I know you're on there.
Yeah.
Lucas on there with you?
No.
Okay. I see Todd Dancia for section 4. Who else we got?
Stevens, and that's it.
yeah,
Scotty
me-
can't make it today.
Scott can't make it? Okay.
No.
West Central. Anybody? Ann Connolly, anybody on there? Okay, that's not good.
No.
Okay, Dave Gazul, I see is on there. I see Matt.
Ponte.
Frank. And who else?
John
John's there. Okay. Matt Smith and John Aponte and Frank, obviously. Niagara Frontier,
That's me. Scott,
just Scott, okay.
Yeah. that's it.
Southern Tier,
Lou Galando.
anybody else, Lou? Roger on there?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Okay, I see Billy Joe Manor.
Yep, I'm here.
Is Fallon getting on?
No, unavailable.
Okay. Long Island,
Rob Aquilina.
Robbie, okay.
Hey, Rob.
Is that it?
No, I'm here, Boscarino.
Good.
That's Suffolk, right? I know Richie.
Yep, Suffolk.
Long Island is actually the name of their association, so. Okay, Orange Sullivan, I see Wayne, WMFC. Northern New York,
Yeah, Bob Dozer.
Bob Dozier, okay. And I see Richie Boscarino's on there. Is anybody else?
No, just myself.
Okay, Rich. How about New York City?
Billy Patton.
Dean Zini.
Good. Good.
Dean Zini?
Yep.
Are you with Dean? Are you the only one on there from New York?
No, Billy Patton's on also.
Oh, Billy, okay. Good. Haven't seen Billy in a while.
Yeah, I know.
Hey.
Haven't seen you guys.
Anybody from West Central on there at all?
Freddie, I'll make a call to him, okay?
Okay. Okay, they're the only ones missing, so.
All right, I'll figure out how to do this.
All right, Mike, back to you.
All right, thanks a lot. Gentlemen, if you would, please pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. First and foremost, thank you for taking time out of your weekend to meet with us. This thing came very quickly, as we all were talking in the fall and early winter. We did not think we were going to have a season. Probably 95% of us were like, no. So when the state announced this, it was a bit of a surprise. And so we've moved along very briskly. The executive committee has done a lot of work in the background to get prepared for this meeting. We do not feel we're not going to say we've touched on everything. And that's why another purpose for this meeting is that with the number of brilliant minds that are on board here, we'll be able to identify situations, and with Steve here, we'll try to clarify everything we can as much as possible in relationship to the COVID and to the rule book and the application of the rules, and maintaining the integrity of the sport, and also providing a safe environment for our officials and for the wrestlers that are there. And it's come to our attention that some of our officials who opted out originally have decided they want to get back into the officiating, and thus, become part of this season. We understand also that some of them did not take the test. So the first thing I'm going to say is this, that the executive committee convened and decided to open up the examination period with the state. It'll be open on February 1st and will close February 7th, if I'm wrong. Is that correct, right, Fred?
Yeah, that's correct.
And so, I just want it to be understood that you explained to your membership that we purposefully explained we wanted everybody to follow procedure and protocol as this season progressed, that we would be planning from the beginning that the season would occur. And thus, if it didn't, so be it. So this inconvenience for us to have to reopen this up and, allow these, fellas to take the test, which is okay. We're not against that, but we do want them to understand the work that went into to have this situation opened up for them. It's not easy. You just don't snap your fingers and things fall into place. So do clearly understand, when we talk about from the executive committee down to the association membership, when we ask you guys to do stuff, we hope that, everybody would fall in line and do the things we ask you to do. So enough said about that. Any questions in regards to opening up of the test, the examination for those guys to take?
So
Anybody?
Mike, sorry, why did we open it back up? If those guys didn't take the test, that's on them. I mean, they took it thinking we were going to have a season. That should be on them.
I'm sorry, I'm jumping all over you. I apologize.
Okay.
That is a very, very good question that the executive committee wrestled with for a few minutes and discussed that inconvenience. And then you add the rest of the picture. Some chapters are short officials, and those officials in those chapters that opted out that now want to opt back in, now give those chapters the numbers to be able to provide the service to the member schools within their section. And so that was the overriding decision on our part, that for the good of the association and good of the chapters, we'll make this exception. And it has been crazy, but Gary, I duly noted, great point made.
Well, that's what I'm saying is, like, and those chapters are struggling, it's going to be a shortened season, not as many matches. They were struggling from the get-go anyway. So
No, that's not the case, Gary. There's one that was a pretty good sized chapter that a lot of their guys opted out, and now some of them went back in. They probably don't have enough officials to cover matches they're going to have now. So that's one of
we don't have enough officials sometimes to cover our stuff, but we figure it out, and I'm just saying, and not, whatever. It's, it doesn't make a shit anywhere. So
yeah,
there it is. All right. I'm just saying people should do what they're supposed to do when they should do it, and we shouldn't be making exceptions. But Fred, that's how I stand all the time. So.
I know. So,
well, we felt the same way. I'll be honest with you, Gary. It's just the idea that, these are radically different times. In the normal sense of normal season, we would not be bending and changing course during the season. This just seemed to be the easiest, simplest way to give them the opportunity to have success with their season. And otherwise, we put them in a bind, and it just it seemed like the best way to go for us to do the extra legwork and us to do what we needed to do to get it in place. We did it. So
right. Well, I'm just saying, like, when I missed the NCAA rules testing by an hour, they didn't let me back in. They took my $150 and they said, okay, see you later. We don't need to give you anything. So I mean, that's why I'm just saying. you missed it.
Understand this, Gary, understand clearly, this is an exceptional situation. It is not going to become the rule. I look at next season being a regular season that COVID is under somewhat of control. The season will progress normally and our timetables will be set and will be set firmly, and we do not plan on adjusting them.
All right, thanks, Mike.
Let me
You're
just
welcome,
finish-
Gary. Good question.
Let me just finish up this point and before we get into everything. If you are adding guys, and I will send this out to secretaries also, but the president's on here and representatives, please pass this on to your secretaries if they're not here. If you add guys, you have to send me an amended roster with additions, and you have to send in their dues and insurance if they haven't already paid it. I have to get that to the state and to the insurance company to make sure these individuals are covered by the liability and that they're registered with the state. Okay, with that, I think we're all done with that. I think Steve can take over. Yeah, well, back to you, Mike, you're running it, so.
Fred, thank you very much. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, the purpose of this meeting is that the state has sent down guidelines for procedures reopening our season. We are a high-risk sport, and I understand that some seasons are going to begin February 1st in some sections. Other sections are going to start at different times. I believe Section 6 is going to begin in May. So the reason we are meeting is to go through these guidelines and procedures that the state through NISFA has sent through us, also through the guidelines that the New York State Wrestling Committee with Marty Sherman, chairman, has sent to us, and also additional guidelines that our executive committee sat down and worked out. And we wanted to get that all to you. So Steve is there. I now will hand the meeting off over to Steve to run this part of the interpretation. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, this came upon us really suddenly, and as you, some of you know, I had a meeting with Todd Nelson, and they had a discussion as to what areas of the rule, the National Federation rules, would be impacted by any potential protocol that the state was going to come up with relative to the COVID situation. And we went through, and it was going to require some waivers, which we'll discuss, waivers as to weigh-ins and type of thing. Yes.
Hey, Steve, can I interrupt for just a second?
Of course.
Mark Smith is trying to get on here. I have to resend him the.
No, I got it in now. I was.
Oh, he's in. Okay, good. Okay, go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So we had a meeting, and we then got together with the executive committee, and Mike ran a meeting where we all got together and we read through some of this document that we were provided about a week ago. We received a 71-page document of protocols, which was a bit overwhelming at first, but the executive committee has reduced it to just a few pages of information that were going to be specific to the sport of wrestling. And additionally, it's specific to the performance of the duties and responsibilities of the referee. If you are a member of a coaches association or you're involved in any other aspect of the sport, you'll want to bring yourself up to speed as to what the requirements are for you. This meeting today, we're only going to discuss what the responsibilities are of referees as it relates to this COVID protocol. Okay. As you know, the rules, the rule has opened up the sport of wrestling. It'll start on February 1st, and they're going to be given an opportunity to give their to have their 10 practices with the 7-day rule, which rule that says they cannot practice 7 days in a row has been waived. So they can now start on February 1st. They'll get their 10 practices in 10 days. And the first legal date of competition would then be February 11th. Okay, now I'm going through this. I started to put copious notes together to try to eliminate a lot of duplication because there was so much redundancy as I read through the various aspects of this meeting folder. And I realized it was impossible to do that without inadvertently stepping over and missing some particularly salient point. So while I'm reluctant to do meetings where I just read to you, I am going to have to do that with this and go through each bullet point and read along with me, and then we have questions, we'll entertain them. It's important to know that once we go through this first thing from NISFA, We'll then go back and follow up with the information that was provided to us from Jeff Quilty and as a result of their meeting, and there will be additional items that we'll discuss at that point. So we're going to start off with the responsibility of the official before the match, before you even go to the match. You're going to contact the host management, and you're going to have some areas that you're going to want to discuss with them. See if they have any special expectations for you. Number two, determine where you're supposed to enter the building, because a lot of times they're only using one area of ingress, and so you're going to have to go to the, instead of going to the gym door like you've done in the past, they may have you come in through the front door of the main entrance, because they want to make sure they monitor who's entering the building. All right. Hey, Fred, I see you, but I don't see the NIFSFA folder on there anymore. It's just showing your face.
Yeah, Scott's got to put that up there.
All right. Well, I got mine here. I'll just go. All right.
Hold on one second, Steve.
Okay. I got it here in front of me, but I think the other guys may want to
Oh.
follow along.
It was open and then I was trying to take away the sidebar and I think I turned
Okay,
it
no
off.
problem.
Everybody should have it. I don't know if everybody's printing it out.
All
or
right.
not.
So I'll just go ahead then. Yeah, I got that. You're gonna find out which door to go into and obtain any other information that you or the school may want to communicate to each other prior to arrival. But keep in mind that some of these protocols are going to be amended depending on what county you're in or what school district you're in. And so don't think that just because you're at this school this day that all the protocols are going to be the same. Make sure that you contact them ahead of time to make sure if there's any special accommodations that you need to have, that you're prepared for that. Okay. Next, it says officiating crews should designate one crew member to contact the school. So if you're doing a tournament, you're going to need to find out from your assigner what other officials are going to be involved in that contest and designate one referee to communicate with the school to find out any special accommodations that are going to be required, and then that official will notify the remaining members of the crew of what those requirements are. Okay.
Steve,
And
can you
also
see it now?
I'm sorry.
Can you see it again now?
I can. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Okay. You should. This is not something you're really going to do, but they see request hand sanitizer be available at the scorers table. When you read the protocol for the match management people, they will have sanitizer there. So it's not a conversation you probably will have because they will have sanitizer there. But Todd also said, make sure that your officials are prepared in the event that there, for some unknown reason, aren't the appropriate materials there, that you have some sanitizer with you. So I recommend that you put a little container in your referee bag. You also want to have a conversation as to whether or not there will be any locker room facilities or changing facilities available. This is mostly referring to when you have a tournament and there's going to be multiple officials. You want to make sure that they have adequate size for the changing area so that the officials that are working as a crew can maintain social distancing while they're changing. In most cases, particularly dual meets, they recommend that the official come completely dressed in their legal uniform, ready to participate, so that at the conclusion of the contest, they can just go home and take a shower and wash their clothes off-site. All right. So now that gets us down under general official guidelines. This is key here. Officials are not responsible for monitoring activities on the sidelines, such as social distancing, face coverings, hand washing, symptoms of illness, and other such issues. This monitoring obligation remains with the coaching staff and school personnel. Now, under that line, it says on the sidelines. But later on, when we get deeper into this program, you're going to see another area where it says all you're responsible for is meet management and does not include monitoring other activities in the facility. Okay, so because what happens is some people are going to read that word sideline and think, well, I have to make sure that the kids on the mat also, sanitize and do all these things and social distance. Well, if they do social distance during the match, I got stalling on both guys. Okay, because if they're 6 feet away from each other, we got problems. So I just wanted to make sure that you know that you're going to go there and you're going to referee just like you always refereed, with the exception if you're going to be wearing a mask. But when the wrestlers come out, we'll discuss this further later. There are going to be things that are going to occur that are going to be contradictory to this protocol. It's not our purview to make any kind of unsportsmanlike calls or anything. We are just there to take care of the management of the match. Okay. Okay. We need to be prepared to have a health screening conducted upon arrival. They'll probably ask you some questions, whether or not you've had symptoms, etc. And they, in all likelihood, will take your temperature and record that. It's not your responsibility. Again, it's the responsible party must ensure a distance of at least 6 feet is maintained among individuals at all times. Again, this is not your responsibility. Now, all participants are going to be required to wear a mask while they're wrestling and when they're on the bench. And when they are not wrestling, they're supposed to all maintain a distance of 6 feet. Again, that's not our responsibility to enforce that. It also has a limitation on there that says if a contestant cannot tolerate wearing a mask, then special considerations will be given. And then if you look down, you see the note where it says if an official cannot tolerate a face covering while officiating, it's recommended that he or she contact their local health department for guidance. So in almost every situation, you as an official will have your mask on and you'll put the mask on when you get out of your car and keep it on until the time you get back in your car. But if you have a special consideration due to some health condition, you may want to contact your Department of Health for guidance on that. And they may recommend to you that you wear a face shield or some other way of accommodating this rule. Next bullet point, upon conclusion of the contest, officials should leave the contest area and not interact with others. Unlike in the past where when it was over, you would socialize with people, maybe talk to each coach, etc. When you're done, take your own personal pen, sign the bout sheet or the scorebook, write the completion time down, and exit the building, go to your car, take off your mask, and go home.
Steve, what about your voucher to get paid?
They're going to give you your voucher just like they did in the past. But what I've been seeing down here is they hand it to you when you enter the building. They have it at the head table, or not the head table, where you enter, where you buy a ticket typically, and they'll have you fill that out. And again, we're requesting that you bring your own writing implement so that you can do the voucher, and also at the end of the contest, sign it so that you're not exchanging pens back and forth with others, like your scorekeeper. And
that's also something they can handle when they call the school to find out where and everything. Ask them about that voucher at that time.
Let's put a note in there to add that as one of the things you're going to determine when you do call. That's a great call, Freddie. When you make your call to the host school, that's a question we should all ask: is how are we filling out our vouchers? So that's something we can add to that as list of responsibilities.
Everything's so electronic now. You can do all that via online.
Sure. Okay.
Maybe.
All right. Yeah, officials must pay special attention to rules, require distance between players during play. You got to remember that these general guidelines were written for all sports. Obviously, that would not apply to wrestling. Reminders should be used for situations that involve hygiene. Again, if you've got a kid over there spitting into a garbage pail or throwing up or something, maintain your distance and let the coach and contestant do their thing. It says officials should be aware of the location of medical personnel while on school property. Limit the exchange of documents between officials and others, which goes back to Billy's question there. You want to limit it, but you're going to still need to have that official weigh-in sheet at the head table. You're still going to have vouchers to contend with, and you're going to have a scorebook to deal with. And the last bullet point there says, wash hands frequently.
Hey, Steve.
Sure. Yeah.
Back up there, it was talking about altercations. These two guys get in a little scrum and they start pushing, shoving. It says there on the document that we should maintain our distance. So do we just let them hammer each other?
No. Hey, you see this, it maybe in football or something, you throw the flag and then you get back and you don't, like we discussed the other night in our executive meeting, for the sport of wrestling, you're going to intervene and break those two kids up if they're in some kind of a physical altercation. And then at the completion of that, you're going to award or penalize them accordingly, whatever you need to do, whether it be flagrant misconduct or whatever. And then you're going to go sanitize, which we will discuss later on as to how we're going to address the sanitization between periods, etc.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Officials' uniform and equipment. They have authorized the use of an electronic whistle if you're inclined to use that. Those people that I've discussed this with that have used the electronic whistle have found it a bit cumbersome because it's kind of big and it requires you to change hands repeatedly when you're trying to signal. So I think you'll find that the use of a whistle under your face mask is going to be much more to your liking. Okay. To be aware of the increased risk of inadvertent whistles. I don't know what exactly that has to do with COVID, but bring your own towel and hygiene material and do not share them with others is pretty much common sense. And you'll see later on, we discuss this. You'll also want to bring your own personal water bottle or hydration beverage so that you're not sharing water bottles, which is common sense. Try to use your equipment only. Now,
Steve?
Billy, if you and I are working together, no, you can't borrow my shirt. Okay, we can't exchange shirts. We can't
Steve?
exchange whistles. I can't borrow your whistle.
One thing to note, most schools have covered up the fountains.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely want to bring your own water with you. Now they do, I know some schools will have the fountain where you can fill a water bottle and those are still functional, but they may not be anywhere near where you're at in the gymnasium. So, but yeah, keep in mind, their fountains are taped up. You can't just get a drink out of the fountain.
Yeah, that's a good point. They are. Okay, it says upon arrival, communicate with school athletic administrator prior to the contest pertaining to school expectations. Most of that should have already been taken care of in your pre-meet telephone conversation that you had before the contest, days before the contest. Upon arrival at the host site and throughout the contest, officials should wash and sanitize their hands. We'll discuss that what the protocol will be for us in New York State in a few minutes in the meeting here. When traveling to contests, consideration should be given to limiting carpooling. Unlike in the past, where they recommended that we carpool, they're now discouraging that and having people travel in their own vehicles so that they're not contaminating one another. And again, here it says, do not share uniforms, towel, apparel, or equipment. Pretty much common sense. Maintain a social distancing of 6 feet at all times, including while in the locker room and or on the court or field. This will require you to somewhat modify the way you referee, staying back 6 feet or more at most of the time. However, in the past, like if you had a situation where you needed to move in closer, then you move in closer. But in general, they want us to try to stay away from the contestants 6 feet. Of course, on your restarts, when you're starting them in neutral position, you're still going to get yourself in between them with your hand or your leg without making contact with them, and then withdraw quickly when you blow the whistle. So again, you got to remember that these general guidelines are for all sports. We'll get into some more sports specific stuff in a minute here, which just covers wrestlers. Limit attendees to one official. Okay, pre-game conference. When you have the kids come out for the coin or the disc toss prior to the competition, you're gonna let the referee will be there, one coach from each team, and one captain. And they will maintain social distance, flip the disc, let it hit the floor, handle your ceremony, and there will be no shaking of hands either pre or post contest. They've said no shaking of hands at all. So we'll keep that in mind. Pre-contest official crew meetings should be held outside when possible and where social distancing is more accomplished. Yeah, just have your meeting in the hallway or something. If you're going to talk to your other crew members, because I don't think you're going to want to have it outside this time of year in New York. All right. Again, coin toss should involve only the head referee wearing a face covering and one captain head coach of each team. It's a little redundant there. No handshakes are permitted. We just discussed that. Maintain social distancing while performing all game responsibilities. Again, there will be times when you're doing your game responsibilities that you have to move in closer. That's the way wrestling is. Pre-game introductions should be altered to ensure social distancing occurs and no handshaking during introductions. See, as I'm reading through this, this was why I was trying to do this separately, so I would eliminate all this redundancy. But I know for sure we were going to miss some really good points, so we'll go through it like we're doing. At the officials table, the officials table is going to be limited to 2 people now. It'll be the scorekeeper and the timekeeper. They'll be sitting within 6 feet or more from each other, so they can still verbally communicate. But the visiting team scorekeeper is not deemed as essential and will be asked to sit somewhere else. If they have an issue regarding the score not being accurate or a discrepancy between the official scorekeeper and the visiting scorekeeper, we can have a conversation at the table, but everyone will maintain their social distancing while the discussion is taking place. Okay. Pre-game and post-game ceremonies, again, they re-emphasize the fact that they won't have the normal introductions where kids come out and shake hands with each other. And they won't be shaking hands. Even when they come out on the match to wrestle, those kids will not be shaking hands before or after, which moves us down to personal responsibilities. Personal responsibilities are the same as they've always been. You've got to know your rules. You've got to read your casebook and manual, and you've got to attend your meetings and take your test, etc. So we'll move along to the next area. Go ahead and slide that up, Scott. Thank you. Here are the rules that are specifically for wrestling. All right. And again, you're going to say, well, we already covered all this stuff, but we'll do it again. General considerations: no handshakes following the coin toss, in addition to pre-meet and post-match ceremonies. So the thing to keep in your mind is this: nobody's shaking hands with anyone. There will be no handshake at any time. No fist bumps, no high fives, etc. Wash stations or sanitizers should be placed at mat side. That would be the responsibility of the host management. However, if for some unknown reason they're unable to comply with that little bullet point, we know that we've informed you to be prepared to bring your own sanitizer so that you can protect yourself. Okay. If writing implements are used, they should be sanitized and not shared with anyone. That's it. Again, I said, if you bring your own pen with you, it should be fine. Just use your own pen for all the paperwork, put it back in your pocket and be on your way. So nobody's contaminating anyone else. Disinfect the mats prior to competition. Pretty standard procedure, but it's more important now than it's ever been. Participate, host smaller events. Oh, okay. They're just requesting that we don't have huge tournaments anymore, but that's beyond our area of concern.
Steve, I just have a quick question. With the whole disinfect the mats, is there going to be a push to see if host schools can have 2 mats and you can alternate between mats during the match?
No, in fact, one of the things that I brought up how we're handling it in South Carolina, and we're doing that. And we sanitize between matches. They said that wouldn't be necessary, that wasn't one of their protocols. So that's not something that's open for consideration. I also said that there is a electronic fogger that a lot of states are using. It looks like a leaf blower, or a bug sprayer, and it just puts out a fine mist of fog. It settles on the mat. It dries within about a minute. And they said that they were not going to require that either. So just the normal mopping, sanitization of the mats that we've always done, all that stuff that Ken Shield sells and that the people are using on their mats all has a viricide in it. And that was as far as they went. But your suggestion is not a bad one, but it was not one that the state committee required. So they'll be using one mat, and it'll be sanitized before the match, and then that's the end of it.
Steve, if they want to sanitize it more often, are we going to allow it?
It's not really covered, but here's the problem. You're going to delay competition for an inordinate amount of time if they're using conventional mopping methods. So I don't see how you can say no to them. But if you go to a match and they're saying, well, we're going to mop the mat between each competition, you're going to have to get through it somehow and then have a discussion with the state committee on how to go forward in the future. Because I don't want to tell them, no, you can't, and end up getting you guys in trouble. But by the same token, you can't wait 20 minutes between each match for it to dry. So let's defer to the state when it comes to those kinds of issues. But if you're caught in that predicament, let them do what they're going to do because it's their school. And then we'll send a letter off to Todd or Robert Zayas or somebody and find out how to handle it going forward, okay?
Steve, real quick on that point, what about between varsity and junior varsity competitions?
It just says prior to competition, so the difference is, and keep in mind, a lot of these questions are unanswered because I don't have my case book or anything to pull back on to get the answers. But to me, if you start the match and they're only requiring it to be sanitized prior to competition, that would require it. It would be satisfactory for the whole JV and varsity to combine. So I think we're good to go forward there. Okay. Have hand sanitizer and wipes available at the scorer's table. That's a requirement for the host management. Only official scorer and official timer should be permitted at the scorer's table. We've discussed. If ankle bands are used, it is recommended they be disinfected after each match. And Todd said if they have, if they're using the ankle bands, they just got to have some Lysol there to spray them down prior to each match. And so that's pretty simple. I would recommend they have multiple sets there so they can spray one set and hand off a set. And then when those come back in, exchange them and spray the next set to keep things moving along. The next thing, and this was one of the areas that required a waiver, weigh-ins are not going to be done shoulder to shoulder. What will happen is when a team arrives on site, whether the referees are conducting the weigh-in or not, they're going to instruct the team coming in to go to an area of the gymnasium separate from everyone else. Thank you. They will weigh in the teams by team. So they'll say, visiting team, you come to the scale, you're going to weigh in the whole visiting team, excuse them, weigh in the next team, and then excuse them. So that they're not actually shoulder to shoulder anymore, and that prevents them from having unnecessary interaction with the opposing team. The next one is the honor weigh-ins will not be permitted for this year. Wrestlers will not be given the opportunity to weigh in at the home school anymore. They'll make scratch weight at night, just like they used to do before weigh-ins existed. And as far as weight certifications go, the wrestler will weigh in for their first contest, and whatever weight they register at, that will be the minimum weight at which they can compete for the remainder of the season. Okay. Officials are responsible for pre-meet management, which does not include monitoring activities in the facility. And this is what I was saying, this covers everybody. Social distancing, face coverings, hand washing, symptoms of illness, and other such issues. The obligation remains with the responsible parties. Once again, they highlight, bring personal hand sanitizer and wash your hands frequently, not share uniforms and towels. Change the standard whistle, several times during the day. Electronic whistles are permissible. You may wear rubber gloves or disposable gloves, I should call them. If so, they must be changed after each match. So if you're going to use gloves, every match you got to go over there, take them off and put another set on. Later on in the meeting, we'll inform you that those of you who aren't wearing gloves will be required to use hand sanitizer between each period of the match. And we'll discuss that further in a moment. You still have the requirement to conduct separate pre-meet administration duties, which would include skin checks. What you'll do is once the kids are weighed in, you're going to take them to a separate area where they can be separate from the opposition, and you're going to have them line up like you would have done in the past in their legal uniform, and you'll do your pre-meet inspection for skin, hair, nails, etc. And even though there's no hair rule, we still do have to look at their hair because we want to make sure that there are no beads or anything that would not be in compliance. What We're not going to touch them. There's a lot of guys have the habit of having the kids put their hand like this and they feel them. Don't do that anymore. It's just a visual inspection. You can still have the kid, slowly rotate in front of you to look for any suspicious skin condition. But we're going to do that visually only without touching the competitors. At the end of a match, the referee will no longer raise the winner's arm. At the end of the contest, you're going to say, "Red, you're the winner." You'll step back. You may want to remind the kid, "Red, raise your hand," and they will raise their own hand like this. And then you will step back so that you're away from them, and you'll raise the appropriate armband to signal to the table that you are in fact.
Steve, before, just a quick jump back. As far as the process for the inspection of the athletes, the first thing we still do is ask for the skin forms are still being used this year, correct?
Yes. We're going to use the same format we used in the past that's listed in the green book. We'll still have that same responsibility. The coach is still going to verify that their wrestlers will be properly dressed, properly groomed and ready to wrestle. And we request any kind of skin forms that they have. Then we'll go forward with our administration. Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Hey, Steve, the weigh-in sheets have a place to check for skin checks on it. So the officials should probably get the weigh-in sheets from each team and go right down the weigh-in sheet and check off whether or not they check their skin.
And that's exactly correct. That's a great point. And that also verifies that you've got the right number of contestants in that area being inspected. Somebody in hiding under the bleachers. So yes, we'll do that. We'll ask for the skin forms, and we'll ask for the official weigh-in sheet so that we can go down at. I like to have them line up by weight so that as I'm going down the list, I can check them off one at a time and say, you check, you check. That's a great point. Those are some of the things that are newer that I sometimes forget. Okay.
Yeah, Steve, is there a new skin form for this season? Are we using last year's, or is it published?
The exact same form, but it has a different date on it, and that is the only one that they're supposed to use, and it's downloadable. So they can go on the nyspHSAA.org and get those forms. But yes, it has the date's the only thing that's changed on it.
If they print it in color, it's the new date is in red on the form. So.
Correct.
Steve, with regard to the weigh-in, one team is weighing in, they leave, the other team is weighing in, and they leave, but now a kid who has not made weight, he still has that time period.
Yeah, we don't follow the National Federation rules, which limit that timeout. So what they will do is they'll have to wait until they're summoned. The kids that didn't make weight during the official weigh-in, which is 30 minutes long, and they will be summoned over on an individual basis when the scale becomes available.
Okay.
So, but the weigh-in period still lasts for 30 minutes. So if they start their weigh-in at 6 o'clock for a 7 o'clock match, and the kid steps on the scale and is not on weight, has a quarter pound over, they still have the remainder of that 30 minutes to come into compliance with the weight class. Unlike this federation, which would have eliminated him from that, and he or she would have to move up. Yeah, thank you, Frank. Cool. Now, the next thing here, consideration for coaches, we'll just skip right over that. Again, this is an officials meeting, so we won't discuss those matters.
Hey, Steve.
Sure.
Is it still within the protocol that if a referee isn't conducting the weigh-ins but wants to be at the weigh-ins to do the skin check, is that permissible?
Oh, yeah. Wherever you can do the skin checks, you're entitled to do that. If you think it will expedite things, you can do the skin checks while they're weighing them in, because there's still going to be one team at a time. They're still going to have their uniform on with their shoulder straps up and be, because now with everyone being weighed in together, gender is no longer an issue. You could do that. You could actually do the skin check and then tell them to step on the scale. It would certainly expedite things if you're available when the weigh-in is taking place, Bill.
Right.
Okay. Consideration for students, we'll skip through that area as well.
Hey, Steve, sorry to go back on the weigh-ins, but 30 minutes should start for each team. So it's not, if you're doing team A, they get 30 minutes and then you go over and do team B.
The weigh-in period is going to start once you start weighing people in, if let's say you get to a dual meet, both teams have arrived, so that there's not an issue with that. Weigh-in period is 30 minutes long, and we're in uncharted territory here. So you're just out of good manners and hospitality. You're probably going to weigh in the visiting team first, but that weigh-in period starts at 6 o'clock, even though the other team hasn't had the opportunity to step on the scale yet. But they're going to be immediately back to back. So it's not. Keep in mind, we're already giving them a tremendous advantage.
The only reason why I bring that up is because whoever the second team is to get weighed in, if
Yep.
he hasn't made weight, he actually is sort of getting hosed on how much time he has to make weight.
I know, but I'm saying is just keep in mind the difference between the New York State rule on weigh-ins versus the National Federation, where they can only step on once. They're already getting we're already extremely lenient. And think about it this way: is it if the 98 or the 106 pounder steps on the scale, we don't let's say whatever the lightest weight is, we don't then say, well, we'll start it over at 610 for the heavyweights when they get on. So it's 30-minute weigh-in period. That's
Okay, all right,
okay.
fair enough.
Fair enough.
I understand.
Because like I'm saying, it's still fair. It's still fair. Consideration for parents. Next. Okay. Yeah, I think that might be it for the NIFSFA stuff, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now we'll go to this stuff, and I think this stuff is really, really important. Let's go to the stuff that we got from the committee, Jeff Quilty's committee there, if I may.
Hold on 1 second.
Sure. You guys remember, this is new to me. I've known about this for a week, the same as the rest of the executive committee. So we're all kind of trying to get through it.
Can you see it?
Here we go. Yes. Here we go. And as I'm going through this, you're going to say, well, cover that. But let's just make sure we don't miss something. 10 practices to be able to compete. I discussed that. They have given us a waiver so that the 7-day rule no longer applies. Therefore, on February 11th, they will legally be ready to wrestle, provided that particular contestant has had their required number of practices. It's not something as a referee that we're going to have to look into. We just expect that they've met that criteria when they step on the mat. If they haven't, then that's something the coach will be held accountable for.
Steve, question about weigh-ins. Have to weigh in with the mask on, correct?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
so if they're a 10th over, they can't take their mask off to try to make weight.
No, but unlike in the Federation, they can go away, lose the 10th of a pound and come back still with their mask on. Okay, they can do that.
I'm just foreseeing a kid missing weight by a 10th or 2 and then saying, well, I'm just going to take my mask off and I'll be good.
Should have the mask on because that's the protocol that we've been told when they're not competing or they're at all times, they're going to have their mask on.
Okay.
And those things the weight of a mask is infinitesimal. They could go spit and they'd lose that weight, right? So, but again, they're given at least they're given the opportunity to come back. If this was the National Federation, they'd be moving up. So yeah, they should have their mask on because they're going to be in really close proximity to that person running the scale. And okay, 10 practices, blah, blah, blah. Shoulder to shoulder weigh-ins will not be done. We've discussed that. Now keep in mind, because we're starting this season late, at the beginning of the season, the growth allowance will already be in effect. So all the weight classes will essentially go up by 2 pounds immediately. All right. And the weight certification, as I mentioned earlier, the minimum weight that they can wrestle at is the weight that they weigh in at their first competition. Okay. Can you move that up then to the next thing, Scott? Here we go. Masks are required for practice and competition. A stipulation does, however, exist that if a student cannot tolerate the wearing of a mask, there are special considerations. Stipulation does state unless you can't tolerate it, but this stipulation is up to each school district, and if a school district requires the mask, it must be worn at all times. Now, as officials, we're not going to know which kids fall into that category or which schools follow that protocol. So it's not something we have to monitor. If a kid doesn't have a mask on, we'll assume that that person can't tolerate it. And the reason that mask isn't being worn is because they have received special permission not to wear it. And that is a duty of the coach or the host administration to monitor, not the official. All right, what do we do if the mask comes off during competition, which I would predict will happen? How do we handle it? Well, we handle it the same as if a headgear becomes displaced. Allow the competition to continue until there's either no significant action or they go out of bounds or the match is stopped for some other reason. All right, we just don't panic. Just like if a kid's mouth guard falls off, we don't panic and stop the match. We wait till there's an opportunity to stop the match without disrupting good action. Okay.
Steve,
Yeah, who's that, Scott?
for the mask,
Dave.
let's say a wrestler starts bleeding, he gets blood on the mask. Are they gonna put that same mask back on, or should they be? I mean, I know they should be changing to another mask.
Well, the mask in this case, if it's got blood on it, treat it the same as your uniform. If a uniform has excessive blood, we require it be changed. Remember, there's a rule in the book that says if there is excessive blood on the wrestler's uniform, they have to change it. So use your own judgment. If it's really excessive blood and you wouldn't be comfortable, ask them to change their mask. But
Okay.
it's just, we're going to use the same logic that we would use as it relates to the person's uniform. Okay.
Okay, the other thing is they cannot tolerate. If a wrestler comes out on a mat and says, "I'm not wearing a mask, I can't tolerate it," we're just going to start the match.
We're not even going to ask them. We're not even, if they come out with or without a mask, we're not asking why they don't have a mask on, because that is not up to us. We're only there to manage the meet. So if they come out without a mask on, the onus is on the coach. We're going to assume that coach has gone through the correct channels to make sure that wrestler is one that could not tolerate it, because we're not going to, imagine if we were given that responsibility to have to check that, Dave, it would be absurd. So just for us, if they come out with a mask on, we're going to wrestle. And if it comes off, we're going to treat it like a headgear. If they come out without a mask on, we will assume that coach is taking on the responsibility that kid has somehow gotten permission from the Department of Health that they can't tolerate the wearing of a mask, and we're just going to referee them.
Okay.
Are you legally and properly equipped? Is that the question that we're all asking in our coaches anyway? That's a part of it, right, Steve?
But you would think it would be, but here's the thing: if we can't consider this part of their equipment, because by rule it's not in the rule book. Okay, this is a unique time in which we're dealing. So if they come out without a mask on, we are not going to say you've got to go get a mask and start the injury clock and do all the protocol we would follow for someone who reports under Rule 735, which says you must report legally dressed, properly groomed, and ready to wrestle. The face mask is not a part of that equation. If they came out without their headgear, yep, we would have to enforce that because everyone has to wear a headgear. This rule here, it's the responsibility of the coach to make sure that kid is in compliance with the COVID protocol. Okay.
Very good.
Versus the National Federation rule. So like I said, the onus goes completely on that coach that sent this kid out here. I'm refereeing them and I'm taking them at face value that they have a kid here that can't tolerate it. And if the whole team comes out there, I'm going to suspect that their intentions are not pure, but it's not our call.
Steve, would it be
Hey, Steve.
appropriate to ask in your pre-meet? Would it be appropriate to ask in your pre-meet to the coach, are all of your wrestlers wearing masks? So you're not blindsided.
Not bad, Frank.
So
not bad.
The question though, Steve, is you should be asking the home team coach, because if it's required at that school, as they said, and if you read that paragraph,
yeah,
then they have to wear it or they have to forfeit.
But if they come out without it, I'm not enforcing that rule, because it says right in there, I'm only responsible for the meet management. So if that kid comes out without a mask on, the host school that has that rule, they should bring it to my attention.
Okay, and then how do you treat it? It's either they have to mask or forfeit or what?
Scott, we're on uncharted territory here. I don't know. Can we, hey,
Because here, I mean, if you read up here, it says a visiting team whose school does not mandate a mask, who travels to a school district that does mandate a mask, will be required to wear a mask.
correct.
So that tells me. It's
But it also says that we're not responsible for the enforcement of that rule. Okay, so there's where the rub is. They're required to wear a mask, but it also says we're not required to enforce that rule. So it's up to the home management. So I heard this recently. Can we circle back to that? Can we circle back to that? Because I need to find out the answer for you, Scott.
Yeah.
Steve.
Yes.
Steve, can I ask a question on this? What if the opposing coach calls you to the table and wants a question if this kid is to the mat, properly equipped?
Yeah.
Do we go to the other coach and say, hey, is this one of your kids? Or, at that point, I guess we have to get involved.
No, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to put a pin in this, and I'm going to find out from Todd how to handle this, because it's we're talking out of both sides of our mouth here. We're saying you have to have this mask on by rule or by COVID guidelines, and yet our rules don't require it. So give me an opportunity on Monday to get a hold of Todd and find out how to do this, because is it special equipment or is it required equipment? Okay, so give me an opportunity to discuss this with somebody of a higher authority than me.
Well, I was going to suggest that, Steve. This language here puts the officials all in a bad spot, no matter how you want to soften the tone in regards to the language of mass. This definitely puts us in a very difficult spot here. That's all I'm saying. It just does.
I agree. But I don't feel comfortable being the final decider of that. And I don't even think
we shouldn't be.
Right. And I don't think even the executive committee would want to handle this. I think it should be left to New York State to give us their answer. Thinking from a official's perspective, these types of issues maybe never entered their thought. So now if we ask them and ask that in a email form, I will have a written response that will give us sort of like a receipt of how we're supposed to handle it. But at this point, I don't have the answer to your question. So give me some time on Monday to get a hold of the office.
Steve, to this point, I'm looking at an article from the CDC where the American Academy of Pediatrics specifically recommends not wearing a mask for wrestling for the risk of choking. Is there a chance that these guidelines could change?
You know what? Bring that up with Todd, Steve.
Okay, Nicholas?
Yes.
Where are you getting that from, the CDC guidelines?
An article from the CDC website about a wrestling tournament that was held in Florida, where some individuals tested positive, and it came from that. So, but the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends, I'll read the paragraph. The American Academy of Pediatrics interim guidance for return to sports specifically recommends against mask wearing during wrestling because of the choking hazard that face coverings could pose.
Thank you. I'm going to find out the answer to your questions that you have relative to this face mask and the guy who reports not legally ready to wrestle with a mask. And I'm also going to print off and read what you've just made me aware of.
I can send a link if you want. I can maybe put a link to
yeah, thanks. Can you send that to me? I'd like to let them see that. Maybe that's something that will make them reconsider their position on contestants wearing a mask, because I can't imagine having to wear a mask and a mouth guard if I have braces and try to breathe.
Steve, in the end of the day, it's probably going to be up to the local health department anyways, because
sure, I know
on them.
And those, like I said earlier, those things are going to vary from section to section, from school district to school district, and from county to county. But I have got questions here that I don't have the answers to, and I don't think anyone does yet. So give me an opportunity, and it will just be a quick email back to you guys to give you what the correct response is. Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Steve, one more thing to add to that maybe is what their definition of a mask is. Does it have to be a surgical mask? Can it be a gaiter? Can it be, I mean, you walk into any store, you're going to see people wearing any type of face covering that they think makes them compliant. So is there going to be a a quote unquote mask type requirement, or would a gaiter suffice?
I read, in reading through all that literature, all it ever referred to was a face covering. It doesn't even use the word mask. It says face covering. And so I wondered if that was, could it be a shield? Well, I don't think so. All right, for the wrestler anyway. The officials maybe, but not for the wrestler.
And many individual school districts have taken upon themselves to specify what masks staff and students must wear. Many school districts have already set that, where you have to wear the surgical mask. Now, the Gators are not allowed on campus grounds in some schools across the state.
I'm going to find out. I'm writing these questions down because, I'm going to get the answer from somebody that has the ability to give the answer, and that's not me. So
what Ray just said, I heard at a coaches meeting that I went over the new rules with the coaches on Friday, and they said in a certain county, the county, like Gene pointed out, the health director said this mask is okay and this mask is not okay.
Yes.
So.
Right, and think about, just from your perspective, David, Section 5, there's a lot of counties involved, and if they all have different protocols, that's why we're calling ahead. But as far as we are as a state association, we need to find out if number one, are they defining what is an appropriate face cover? Are they limiting whether or not we can apply unsportsmanlike conduct or a technical violation if the kid reports without a face mask? Those are all unanswered questions that I will find out the answer to.
And like Matt said, interpret a mask. We're not allowing a bandana, or are we?
I don't know the answer, Dave. I'm going to find out. I'm going to make them define, or request that they define to me what is the legal mask, and then I'll have clearer answers for you. Right now, I'm operating from a complete vacuum of ignorance.
Okay. I think what you're going to find is we've been on conference calls with Robert Zayas, and Zayas is that from NISPA's point of view, they can't force a kid to wear a mask because there's potential legal issues involved. So that's why they're saying that it's not our responsibility. So they're worried about legality. So
hey, exactly, like that Nicholas said the kid choked. Well, if we force the kid to wear a mask and he chokes, you know what they're going to say? You made that kid wear a mask. Now that's all on you, right? So you guys got to remember that I'm not dealing with 45 years of experience with this stuff like I am with wrestling rules. I'm dealing with 5 days worth of experience. And so I'm at a real loss for giving you accurate information. And I'm doing it only based on, the minimal conversations I've had with Todd as well as the executive committee.
Yeah, I had a meeting with the other officials, and we're on a committee of all the other officials in Section 3. And what you guys are concerned about, kids not wearing a mask, was the biggest issue that all the officials had. But basically what it boiled down to was, if you know going in that a kid might not be wearing a mask, it's your choice to officiate that, to officiate or not officiate, is what it's probably going to end up being.
Okay.
Steve, same adornment rules apply to the mask, just like the headgear?
Well, no, let me think here a minute. The rules say that adornment, the word adornment is eliminated completely from the book. So things can be adorned. However, they cannot have, there is a limit to the number of manufacturers, logos, and that kind of thing. But the words adornment are no longer part of the rule book. I do mention it in the green book only in the regards that it says if equipment is adorned, it can't be something which is unsportsmanlike in nature or reflect negatively on their opponent. So they can have decorations on there, just like you can have Mickey Mouse socks. It says in the case book, it specifically uses the term Mickey Mouse. The rules for adornment are not in play here. So as long as it's not something that's worth.
Well, what about if a kid because we've told our coaches time and time again, you can't have a college logo on your headgear. Can they have a college logo mask?
I don't know. Let me write that down as a question.
But it would be special equipment, Stephen. So the only adornment we're looking for is the logos.
Well,
manufacturer's logo.
Here's the thing. Is this headgear, or excuse me, is this mouth guard or face mask? Is it special equipment or is it required equipment? I don't know, because if it's required equipment, it would be subject to the rules that limit the number of manufacturers, logos, trademarks, right?
Well, if the school district requires it, then it's considered required equipment.
But the school district requires it based on COVID protocol and not based on National Federation rules. And that's why we have to have those waivers, right? So we're walking a fine line, because as an association, we're here to enforce National Federation rules. If the school district gives us COVID rules, this is a whole other ballgame, something none of us have ever had to enforce. So, but each of these questions, I'm writing them down. I'll get the answers, and primarily I need to know is this special equipment or is it required equipment? What's the definition of an appropriate face cover? And what are our options if a wrestler reports without the face cover in a school district which requires it? What rule book support do I have for calling a forfeit or disqualification or whatever they want me to term it as? You've got to give me a couple of days to get those answers.
Steve, what if an opposing coach has a question on the opponent's kid, is not wearing a mask? I don't want him to compete because he's not wearing a mask. You have to make him wear a mask. What is it going to be? Is it going to be a forfeit? Is it going to be no contest?
This is what I was just trying to allude to. Is I'm going to find out for you, Wayne. Okay, I'll find out. I'm writing it down. Opposing coach asks that the other person wear a mask, or they don't want to wrestle. I'll get the answer for you, Wayne. Okay?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And are there any other things like that I've got this email going, I'll throw along in there relative to
Just real quick, Steve, in the comment list, I posted the link to that article.
Yeah.
It's in the
comment. Okay. Thank you. That was Nicholas.
There.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
All right. Where was I now? Mask must be worn, blah, blah, blah. Back in your car. Yeah, the mask must be worn from the time you get out of your car until the time you get back in your car. Make sure that it's on at least before you enter the building, and keep it on until after you exit the building. But that's the way we phrased it so that we could not overemphasize the importance of you not taking it. An additional little helpful hint would be, don't just show up with one mask. I went to a tournament yesterday and I had one mask and I broke it. And now I'm trying to do an on-site repair of a broken mask. So have yourself, they're relatively inexpensive. Grab some extra masks and throw them in your bag, because you don't want to be walking around holding your whistle in this hand and your mask in this hand. Okay? All right. When checking hair and nails, do not touch the wrestlers. I addressed that earlier. It is recommended that you sanitize your hands between periods or as often as you feel necessary. A lot of these COVID protocols that we're giving to the officials are to protect you. All right. They're not to protect the kids. You're going to get those kids' cooties on you. And so they're saying, if you feel uncomfortable with something that's just occurred, such as you caught the kids as they were falling off the mat, you caught them and you've got this wrestler's sweat all over your forearms, take an official's time out and use the sanitizer. At least make sure that you sanitize between periods. If you're not comfortable with that for some reason, remember, it's your health that we're looking after. So if you don't do it, then it's on you. But if you feel comfortable doing it more regularly, you also have the ability to do that. As long as you feel it necessary, go ahead and take the time and sanitize. We're dealing with a whole new world here. This part here, do not contact the mat unnecessarily. They want you to try to modify you the way you referee without jeopardizing your calls. But if you'll ever notice, like Frank brought this up the other day, freestyle and Greco officials, they don't go down to the mat a ton. They stand up a lot more than we do. Now, maybe that's in large part because they're not looking for locked hands, but you may want to just modify the amount of time you spend down on the mat with your bare arms. Go down to a knee or whatever, and come back up if you need to. And of course, if you're looking for a pin, you're going to go down. Afterwards, at the end of the period, you'll probably want to go to the table and sanitize. but just don't go down unnecessarily is the word that's been used here. If you wear gloves, change them after every bout. If you've ever worn gloves, by the way, your hands will sweat so much that the sweat will leak right down onto your armbands. It's not comfortable.
Steve, by not going to the mat, are you advocating bringing back the stamp your foot?
Yes.
Stamp your foot pin?
The stamp your foot pin, yes, we. You know, a great referee once told me, Mr. Turco, he said, if I got to bend down, he's pinned. He was a fine referee, but he had a good sense of humor about that.
You know, honestly,
I'm just kidding.
the
Pardon
guy
me?
in the top row can see he's pinned. Why can't you from being
I
standing
know.
up?
We're not going to go there though. Make sure the kid's pinned, okay? We haven't dramatically changed the sport. Billy, right? Go down and call a pin, Billy, just like you've always done. It's just that, you know, sometimes we dive on our stomachs to look for locked hands, and maybe we could have just took a knee. I for one could not dramatically change my style in order to accommodate these rules, and I know a lot of people are going to be that way. But I also wouldn't panic and go over and put hand sanitizer on every 10 seconds. Just everybody's different.
Right.
Okay.
Well, it was a joke. So
Okay, I'm
nobody
sorry.
took it seriously.
No, I'm sorry. I'm getting so beat up over the space mask, man. I'm getting paranoid. Billy, you are right. Do not call up in from your feet ever again. I don't want you to do that. Ankle bands are used. They must be sanitized. Again, we've discussed this. That was my recommendation, was to use multiple sets. And I'm glad we had this conversation, because there are so many unanswered questions that we need to address and get out to our membership. Man, Billy, you look good. I see you on the screen. You look good.
Steve?
Sir.
Just a quick question. When we start the athletes in the neutral position, generally speaking, we're positioning ourselves between them and starting them.
Yes.
We're not 6 feet away.
I know.
Do they want us
No.
6 feet away and no longer starting right between them?
Nope, we're still going to follow that same protocol, but we're not going to touch them. Okay. I know some guys have developed this technique where they kind of reach in with both hands and touch the kids so that they don't jump. Don't do that. We're still going to put our leg or our arm in between them and come back, pull back quickly. Yeah. If you take certain, when you're looking for pins and you're looking for maybe a potentially dangerous situation, you're going to be well within that 6 foot range. You're going to be way inside of it in many cases. So unlike football or other sports where you can stay away almost all the time, we won't be able to adhere to that completely. Yeah, good question. Okay, what else have we got here? Any other questions about these protocols?
Mechanics like on the out of bounds, catching the wrestlers.
Yeah, well, if you have to make a decision to keep a kid from clunking his head or his elbow or his knee on the floor versus the one in them, whatever chance of catching the COVID, you probably want to catch the kid. That would be in their best interest, because safety is supposed to be paramount. And they think that, you know, sometimes we touch the kids unnecessarily, where, you know, they're getting close to an illegal hold and we're touching it. Like now we're going to have to verbally give commands. Hey, watch that. Keep it legal. Keep it legal. But on the case where they're going heck bent for leather and they're going to hit that floor, you touch them, you catch them. If you got to make a decision as to catch or not to catch them. But then remember, at the end of that period, you're going to go over and sanitize. If you're one of these referees that says, gee, I just touched this guy and he was gross, he was wet with sweat, whoop, take the official's time out and do it immediately if you're more comfortable with that. Okay? That's it. That was your question, right, Frank? Good deal. Anybody else? Hey, Mike, did you have anything for anything that we need to discuss?
No, I'm glad you touched on the out of bounds thing. And I would just, you know, looking at the fact that we're not, you know, kids aren't wrestling for a state championship down the road. You know, if you blow the whistle a little early to save them from going out of bounds and hitting anything, I don't think coaches are going to be upset with that. If we keep in mind, you know, the safety of the athletes and the safety of the kids and us, and we put that foremost, and you blow the whistle a little early and, okay, the guy scored a takedown. Oh, okay. Well, we're back on our feet. No harm, no foul. But the key here is nobody got hurt. So
Yes, and I would remind them that we're fortunate that we're wrestling at all. So let's not be crazy, okay? And let's just relax and let's have some fun.
Along the lines of that, Steve, I think a lot of issues that might come up during a match where we're modifying how we officiate due to COVID can be taken care of in your pre-meet talk with the coaches.
Sure, yeah, that's right. Think it through and think what areas of my officiating might be impacted by these, and remind them of that. And that's one of those things you said, look, I'm going to be a little different on my out of bounds calls because I'm trying not to touch them. That I like that idea of including some of those COVID modifications in your pre-meet, just so they're not caught off guard. Yeah, it may avoid an uncomfortable conversation later. Good call. Good job. Anybody else? Anything you want to help me out with here?
yeah, I just add in, just to remind everybody that, we're talking about in the green book on pages 6 and 7, which is all pre-meet stuff that Van was talking about, and, review that so that you have your ideas. Write them down on a card so that when you walk in the door, you're ready and you're not going to forget anything.
Scott, this was, you recorded all this, right? So it will be available on Zoom, I imagine? Or on,
I'll download it. I'll put it on YouTube and I'll shoot you.
on
the link.
YouTube.
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Steve, is this getting to the end of the meeting?
Yes.
I have a sad news to report to everybody. Some of you may remember Reggie Jones Sr.
Yes.
passed away yesterday.
Oh, that awful.
Thanks, Nick. Can you convey, you talked to Reggie Jr. at all?
I will. I haven't yet. I heard about it this morning. I haven't spoken to
We
anybody
need
yet.
to express our sorrow for that. He was a
We should send something.
character.
I would recommend we send something from the state wrestling officials to the Flowers or whatever.
Nick, if you get an obituary, if you could send it to me, I'll take care of that.
Absolutely.
Could you send us Reggie Jr.'s address? Some of us may want to send a card.
Sure.
Yeah.
Rob, I see you unmuted. You want to have anything to add to that?
I spoke with Reggie today. They're not going to have much of a ceremony. They might have something in the summer. As you guys might know, he was a lifeguard for 50 years as well at Jones Beach. So that's all I know right now, but we'll get you the info on Reggie's address and stuff. He was 93. He's been in a home for a while with dementia and pretty much bedridden for the last 2 years. So it hasn't been a great couple of years, but he's resting now, which is a good thing.
Thanks, Nick.
Okay. Anything
All
else?
right, gentlemen, if there is nothing else, then, keep in mind that the lines of communication are open between Steve, anybody on the exec board. Make sure your members of your chapter are up to speed on all this. If there are additional questions that come up, please relay them up to us and we'll get back to everybody with the best answers we can up to date. Thank you very much, for one, for attending the meeting, two, for looking out for our athletes as we progress through this, abbreviated season. And like someone mentioned earlier, it's great. At least we got a chance to get out there and wrestle. And I know from our section and a couple other sections around the area, there'll be some additional activities and events through club things continuing in through March, April, and May. So I think we're going to be pretty busy throughout the rest of the year. So if there's nothing else,
Mike,
Fred.
I will, I sent an email already to Joe Gregorius about the exam. As soon as I receive confirmation from her that the exam is up, I will send out emails to the presidents and secretaries.
Excellent, Fred. Thank you very much.
My question for you, Mike, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is there was some conversation the other night about section 6 not starting at the same February date. Is that still in effect?
Yeah, we're
And I
starting
also
May 1st.
May 1st. And is section 3 doing something different as well? Or are they going?
One of the leagues.
Okay, so not everybody's starting on that February date. Okay.
No. Just so you know, some section 6 schools are trying to wrestle in section 5, so we'll see how that goes too.
Interesting. Lot of contingencies here. Districts that are in multiple counties, which also presents an interesting problem. So, hey, we'll just go with the flow and be patient, gentlemen. Thank you very much. If there's nothing else, take a motion to adjourn.
So we keep the executive committee on briefly after everybody's off, along with Steve.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Hey, real quick, could Utica and Watertown hang on real quick too, while the meeting's open? App and Max and Johnny Boy?
Yeah.
All right. So motion to adjourn the,
Okay, if you're still on.
our state meeting. Here, motion.
I move.
Motion. Second.
Okay, second.
Second.
Billy?
We're good. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, meeting adjourned, gentlemen. I've got 1:23, Fred. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
Thank
Who
you.
was the second, Mike?
Thank you, Mike.
I'm going to stop recording now too, just